What is up, you amazing people? It's Nima, and I've got a couple games that I want to talk about. A remaster of a Japanese exclusive game by the name of Rainbow Cotton that I'm sure many people are aware of, and then a game called Hotel Hustle, which is incredibly fun, especially with two people. Although first, I just wanted to say a big thank you to everyone who reached out to me, make sure I was taking care of myself, make sure I'm okay. Insomnia is just something I've dealt with my entire life, and it's one of those things when I'm not on my circadian rhythm, which is a very weird time. It's between like 4 a.m. and 12 p.m., which is so off for most people. But when I'm not in that, I can't sleep, and then I survive only on naps for days at a time, and children only make that worse. But I'm pretty much used to it, like I said, but I really appreciate your thoughts. Anyway, let's get started with the first game, and that is a game that has been a Japanese exclusive since it was created, and we've recently seen the release of a remaster, which some of my friends were kind of upset by that, because they really wanted to play the game. Like, they don't care what the story was. This is a shooter slash kind of bullet hell type game. These typically don't have like the most intricate stories, but what they wanted was the game that they didn't get years ago. But I'm happy to report that this actually does have a retro mode, which makes it feel a lot like that original game, as close to genuine as possible anyway. Now, I myself am really new to the series. I don't know a lot of any of the lore or backstory, but I can tell you with this game, we have a kingdom of fairies who are under attack by monsters. Now, without a proper way to defend themselves, they need help. So they call on the help of their unstable yet powerful witch friend, Rainbow, who basically thinks that she's just doing them a solid in return for candy, and maybe not even that. I don't know if she would actually be doing their work for anything, as she's just being guided that there's candy over here, and she loves candy, so she's chasing candy the entire time while obliterating anything and everything that's in her way. And on that premise alone, I actually really dig the story. I also really like the 80s style cartoon scenes that happen in between stages and levels, where we get to find out a little bit more about some of the characters and really just who you're chasing down next. And while I did appreciate those aesthetics, the actual gameplay I don't love. I think it's fine, but it looks more like an N64 style game, and I just feel like if you're gonna do a remaster, like, I don't know, maybe make it a little bit more polished or a little bit more flashy, but that's just me. Some people could really like it. In fact, if you do prefer that style over something a little bit more defined, let me know, I'm curious. But as I continued playing the game, the one thing that really popped out to me was the gameplay, the mechanics. And honestly, I'm somebody who beat this game and I still don't really understand all of the mechanisms in this game. For instance, when you have fairies, when you rescue a number of fairies, it seems like your spellcasting was much quicker. But then there was a point when I didn't have I think only one other fairy, and it still felt kind of the same. So I wasn't really sure if there was a point to have these fairies unless you're, except for to rescue them, which, I mean, you want to rescue a fairy if they're trapped, like, I get that. But then there's this other thing where you have these special powers, and they can range from like basically calling down a meteor to a lightning strike, and it's a pretty cool idea, but it seemed to be at random, I think. And as where I could see one of the mechanisms is collecting these power-ups, collecting the power-ups didn't always correlate to the gauge that showed how many moves you had. So I wasn't really sure what some of these things did. And again, I'm going to repeat this, I beat the game. A little bit more clarity might have been cool, but ultimately for me, there were two much larger problems with this game. And the first one being just sort of a curse of its design, and that being the fact that there was many times when Rainbow herself was in the way. Like, I couldn't see what I was shooting at. It didn't happen all the time, and it was kind of limited on what stages or what area of the stage you're at, but it was enough that I took note, and it was enough that it kind of annoyed me at times. But to add on to that, there was also this lack of impact. Now, I say this as somebody who doesn't play a lot of shooters, and I don't really know what the mechanism is that makes it feel like you're hitting an enemy, but this didn't have it. I don't know how you fix that, and I'm sure that there's a number of people who are saying like, oh yeah, it's this, that, whatever. But I also thinking like I don't want a vibrate function. That would be really annoying because you're hitting a ton of enemies and your controller would basically just feel like that thing that your wife calls husband number one. You don't want that. But I don't know what you do to make it feel like you're having this sense of impact when you shoot enemies. Outside of that, I actually had very few complaints about the game. I know it seemed like I kind of dogged on it, and I don't really mean to, because when I look back at what it has to offer, it's a fun little experience. I do think that it could benefit from a little balancing. There are moments when some of the bosses will just almost one hit you. That could be tuned a little bit, and potentially like a midpoint save or something. I did notice that, like, because the entire run is roughly 2 hours, and sometimes you don't feel like just playing one game for 2 hours. So that would be kind of nice, but ultimately, outside of that, and the other issues I mentioned, I actually really did enjoy it. And this comes from somebody who doesn't ultimately love shooters or bullet hell games. I like to play them when I get a chance, but I gotta be honest, I think this is the first one I've ever beaten, so that speaks volumes to at least some degree. And I have to say, performance-wise, the game performed really well. And that's crucial in this type of game. When you have so many enemies flying around on screen, you're trying to hit all of them, and it does a great job. Now, I will say some of the voice acting and stuff, or I don't even know if it is voice acting, or just sound effects, maybe a little bit over the top a little bit, but it's easy to customize to your own preference. And the music itself is actually really cool as well. I think that's part of the reason why some of the sound effects I didn't like is because it kind of covered up the music. But ultimately, I have to say that even the one thing that I thought I was going to have an issue with was the value. It's a $19.99 game. And when you think about Rainbow Cotton, the one thing I always think about is, if you see it physically, buy it, because it's going to be worth more. And that's the way it is. Like, it's a very limited game, and even this one itself is limited. I think they're only making like 4,000 of them. And then usually on the other side, the digital versions are kind of expensive too. So for $20 for like a 2-hour experience, and also a retro experience if you want to do that version of the game too, that's not bad. Like, I can see a number of people, especially those who are into shooters, into the bullet hells, really be interested in this one. And in fact, there's my friends who are really into shooters that changed my overall score, as I was going to give this game about a 5 out of 10 just because of the sense of impact and the sprite being so large you couldn't see the enemies sometimes. Although 2 of my friends are huge into shooters, especially the retro shooters, and they pretty much loved this game. So I knew I needed to adjust my final score because it's not my forte, I admit that. So yeah, 7 out of 10 is, I think, very fair for this game. Now on to the other game that I've been playing, and namely I've been playing with my family. It's a game called Hotel Hustle, where you are essentially playing as 2 trash pandas trying to run your own hotel. And really, you have just 2 jobs, although they are important jobs. The first one is to admit occupants into vacant hotel rooms. The other one is to clean those hotel rooms. While the first job is pretty easy, the second job has a few obstacles to overcome, like watering the plants, or making the bed, doing the laundry, all the stuff that needs to be done. Of course, vacuuming, that's always important. And you're given a set amount of time to see how many customers you can bring into your hotel. Now, based on that, it'll depend on how many stars you get, with 3 being the highest that you can achieve. This game is incredibly fun in the multiplayer aspect. I don't know how much fun it is by yourself, though. I'm gonna say that. Now, right now, the game's a couple bucks, and that's definitely worth it. Especially if you like playing with other people, or even somebody who's not super committed into games. This is one of those games that's really easy to pick up and play. So it's definitely fun for like a party, or if you want to play a game with like your partner who doesn't typically play games, this is a really easy one to get them into. Especially with kids as well. Like, it's one of those games that I think anyone can pretty much figure out the main mechanics of it. Then it just comes to how fast can you move, and a lot of the fun that happens in that situation. I will say, single player wise, like I said, it's sort of exhausting because you're running back and forth doing everything by yourself. Not as much fun, but like for a couple dollars for a good multiplayer game, definitely think it's worth it. It reminds me so much of like Overcooked and a lot of those type of games where by yourself, not always the best. With other people, it's just a ton of fun. Although it looks like Paper Mario and plays like Overcooked, and you're playing as Raccoon, so I don't know what more you want, but for me, this game gets a solid 7 out of 10, especially for the multiplayer aspect and for the value. you. As I said, right now this game is only $2 or $2.50, something like that. Anyway, I appreciate each and every one of you guys. Please leave a like and comment, subscribe, all of those things that our overlords at YouTube want us to do. But I appreciate each and every one of you guys. Take care, everyone. Love y'all. Bye-bye.